33. Deep in the bowels of the city, in a room that was not on any maps, the lid of a coffin-sized box slid open, and a man thought long dead awakened from slumber. He'd spent millennia cocooned in a mantle of unmoving time, but from his perspective, his eyes had closed mere moments ago. The man was stocky, broad of arm and chest, and wore a long beard that hung to his waist. His skin was the leathery quality of one used to hard work, and a sharp intelligence burned in his eyes. Those same eyes struggled to focus, and he blinked to clear the sleep of ages from them. He tried to speak, but his throat felt like a tube filled with sawdust. He smacked his lips and moved his tongue along his teeth, stimulating long dormant salivary glands. Mavnira, did the stasis field no form? No voice came back to the man's eager ears, no matter how hard he strained. The only sounds were a deep and distant rumble he felt more than heard, and a rush of nearby water. Mavnira! He tried to sit up, but his muscles were stiff, and the small effort spiked him with a dozen cramps. He grit his teeth, and his breathing grew harsh as he willed the pain away. After a few moments, the spasms subsided, and his eyes cleared enough to see motes of dust floating in the air above his head, dimly lit by magical glow globes on the walls and ceiling. Why is it so dusty? And where is my wife? Panic built up in him as realizations that he had not quite made swam in the deepest recesses of his mind. Then, like a fog burned away by the morning sun, realization hit him with the force of a hammer blow to the chest. The stasis worked, and the city has awakened me. There was only one thing that could mean. Someone has opened the city. He pushed his will into his muscles and pulled himself from the sarcophagus. More dust puffed into the air as his feet came to the ground. His knees buckled under him, and he nearly fell. He turned to see his wife's sarcophagus a dozen feet away, and knew something was terribly wrong. It lay partially open, a layer of dust sprouting from the exposed lip like mold. He took a tentative step as fear bit into him. His second was steadier, and by the third step, he was running. He grabbed the heavy stone lid and heaved with his considerable strength. For a few seconds, nothing happened, but then the lid moved, inch by inch, until it eased back into its track and slid open. Inside, among the dust, detritus, and vermin droppings, was the remnants of a skeleton and a necklace of platinum and sapphire. A strangled sound tried to force its way from deep inside him, but failed. His legs gave way, and he collapsed against the sarcophagus. Tears filled his eyes as the depths of his loss pushed through the shock, and he wept. He did not know how long he mourned when a voice spoke to him. Grimlear, get off your fat, lazy ass! Grimlear jumped, eyes scanning the room, heart thumping somewhere between excitement and fear. Mavnira! He knew the moment the name left his mouth that she would not answer, that the voice he'd heard had not spoken in millennia, but was merely a figment of his own making. Maybe I've gone mad. They had both known the dangers of the plan. He had tried to talk her out of joining him, but she had reminded him their mission was too important to fail, and 2 chances at success were better than 1. Their plan had always been a desperate one. Stasis was a tricky proposition. Equipment could fail, someone could discover their hidden lair, and, perhaps, worst of all, stasis could tear at one's sanity. The risks increased the longer the stasis lasted. "And I'm hearing voices and talking to myself." He took a deep breath, steeled himself for what he was about to do, and stood. He looked down into the hollow meant to preserve life that had, instead, stolen his wife's life from them both. "Maybe it isn't her," his mind begged, but it was a foolish wish born of desperate hope. The necklace was the one he had given her on their bonding day. Gently, he pulled the length of silver and platinum free and said his goodbyes. Only then did his mind allow him to wonder why he had been woken. And how long have I been asleep? He walked over to the work table at the far end of the room. Like everything else, a thick layer of dust covered the stone surface. He wiped it clear and placed his hand on a small indentation. The spot grew warm, and a white light flared under his hand. He pushed down, and a square section slid down, and the desk split in half, expanding outwards as another section pushed its way up. An array of glowing runes lit the surface. He ran his fingers over the surface, tapping several of the runes. They pulsed and changed, granting Grimlir access to a host of information. He found what he was seeking, and his mouth hung open. "I've been in stasis for 6,719 years!" The part of him that was the crafter, the thinker, and the artificer wondered how the realms had changed in all that time. Was the world a better place? Worse? If someone had gained access to the city, then things were likely to get worse. Much, much worse. Panic pulsed into his heart as a thought occurred to him, and his fingers flew over the runes. Several more clicks, and the sound of a heavy slab of moving stone drew his attention. The left wall split into sections and parted. The door to the vault was a series of interconnected slabs of stone, designed to be impossible to open. One could hack with a sword, axe, or blast it with magic for days upon days and not gain access. It took a complex code to open. "Only 2 people in all of existence know the code." He caressed the platinum chain at his throat. "And both are in this room." He pushed thoughts of his dead wife from his mind and stepped inside the vault. Additional glow globes came to life, illuminating shelves laden with precious metals, gems, magical powders, and crafting materials of all kinds. A massive automaton stood to the left, opposite a slot that looked to have once housed another of the large metal monstrosities. At first glance, the automaton seemed to be one of the standard Goliath designs, but a closer examination revealed a hollow the exact size of an average Thalmir. Grimlir's heart thudded in his chest. "Her rig is gone?" He tore his eyes away from the empty slot and rushed to an adamantine cube built into a stone dais. From all appearances, the cube seemed solid. It had no hinges or doors, no cracks of any kind. Grimlir placed his hand atop it, and the metal turned from solid to liquid and flowed aside, revealing a square space. A red velvet pillow rested on a raised platform, a circular impression embedded into the soft cloth as if something heavy and about 8 inches in diameter had once lain there. Seeing the box was empty, Grimlir flinched backwards as if bitten. He stood and stared for several long beats of his heart. "The seal of the Dwarven King is gone. How?" The full burden of his useless sacrifice hit him, and he became dizzy. His hands gripped the edge of the desk, preventing him from falling. Then his knuckles went white as fear turned to fury. I have failed. And his wife had died for nothing.